So Sophia is a camp friend that has, well, not from our same camp, but a friend in camping. That we got connected around social media marketing and kind of a shared love of camp and camp things. And for those of you that maybe have heard about the webinar through somebody else, we don't work directly together. I'm Eric Wittenberg. I run Camper Machine and the Camp Stack, and we partner with tons of folks and specialties like organic social management and paid ads and things like that. And so when Sophia and I were talking about, strategies and being a fractional CMO for camps, we thought that we had some info to share that might help everybody out. And obviously we have services to offer you at some point, to help with this. And if you're interested in that, that's fabulous and thank you. And if you're not and you just want to kind of consume what we have to share today, that is also fine and good luck. So no big deal. But with that, I'll let Sophia introduce herself a little bit more completely. Uh,
Thank you.
um, there you go. Well, here's your
Perfect.
meet your hosts. Um, Sophia, do you want to share a little bit about like
Mhm.
your camp story, just so the folks have a kind of a quick understanding of where you're coming from with your work life world and camp history?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give the brief overview. I've been in the social media world for about 15 years at this point. So I think the evolution of social marketing pretty much started 15 years ago. So I've been on the ride since its inception. I've worked with clients big like CNBC, TrueTV, big networks down to small clients like a photo booth company. I really have never discriminated in my career. I always just want to get the best social results from anyone and everyone who I've ever worked with. I started my career creating my own viral Tumblr account in the year 2011, and I just took off from there. So I love creating big moments on social media, and it doesn't need to be any niche really. But what turns out to be great about about Camper Machine and my skill set is that I'm also a lover of being at camp and a camper and a counselor. I was at Frost Valley since 9 years old until probably I was rounding out 20 years old as a counselor. Perhaps Eric has some pictures to showcase, perhaps not. I don't know. I send him a few. But I'm a real lover of camp. I'm going to send my child there. Uh, I'm hoping to the same camp that I went to eventually. So it's just a really big, important part of my life. And when it intersects with my job, it makes everything easier and then also everything better. Because you really have the passion behind the projects. And I like to have passion for all my clients, but when it's something that I truly love and I'm passionate about, it makes it even more sparkly. So, I don't think I've ever used the word sparkly before, but that's how I was feeling. So anyway, I'm just like a camp lover, camper at heart. Wish I could go back to camp all the time. I think about it constantly. So that's a little bit about me. I don't know if I missed anything, Eric, but I think that gives a good rounded view of
So,
where I'm at.
la last time we did this, you didn't name drop at all.
I know you yelled at me not to name drop last
Well,
time, so
you got to give a
up
couple.
front.
Like in my house, we like watched a lot of The Prophet.
Yes, The Prophet, Shark Tank, Jay Leno's Garage, True TV, like all the comedy shows that came out of there. True TV is a thing. Their March Madness campaigns, which were so much fun. Just had a lot of good times in social over the past 15 years for sure.
Cool, cool. Um, all right, so let's shift a little bit and get into sort of like this is going to be a little bit of a drifty conversation. Um, and we're going to talk about a couple of like issues that might be holding you back in terms of what you're doing with organic social, and then kind of share kind of what the roadmap is and looks like, and examples to give you some specifics. Um, and this is where Sophia and I really sort of overlap because in my consulting to do email marketing automation and website stuff and get people more leads, I've experienced these sort of three players having kind of playing nice together in the sandbox. And so when it comes down to social, this is a really interesting thing to consider is that some people, oh, by the way, almost all of these images are generated inside of slides with Gemini. And for whatever reason, I felt inspired at the time, or we were into making them mice. So just that's a nice benefit. But basically, here's a Snoop Dogg of, so, sometimes your social strategies are generated, thwarted, or killed by a director's sort of need to have a fingerprint. We're not going to take a poll of people on the call that are directors or have had been a director that kind of like lampooned an idea or created a crazy idea that didn't make sense. Um, And then we have the second, the person that's often tasked with things that is digitally native, say, oh, you're a 20 something or you're 17 or you're 30, you understand these platforms better than anybody else. Here, go do it. I don't think we need to belabor these things. I know I have personally been the eye-rolling young person and the over-the-shoulder overlord of young people are like, what is the TikTok thing? So this is just plain language that we should, when you're thinking about launching organic campaigns, or really any campaigns, um, you should just recognize that these are players often that have to be, managed. Um, Sophia, anything? Actually, there's a third here. Um, Let me jump back in here. And then the third sort of player in the mix is the admin. Believe it or not, there are a lot of people that have been managing registrar for camps for 30 years and love holding on to that Facebook parent group. And that is a big part of what these people do. So I call them registrar czar sometimes. Um, so this is the sort of player consideration is that no matter what you see after this, don't forget that the people are always going to be the one that deploy it. So you got to manage, your director, owner, operator, executive board, who is your Snoop Dogg that you're dealing with? Who's the digital native or is somebody else doing it? And is there an admin that's secretly been holding on and loves it? Um, Sophie, anything to add there?
No, just well, yes, actually, just one point. No, and then yes. I think that I've seen this across companies. You come in and do a diagnosis of a company and their social media habits, and you find out like there's someone behind the curtains that's been running the Facebook account for like 10 years, but oh, who cares about them? It's just Facebook. There's a lot of these people at different companies. It doesn't just apply to camps, and I think uh, it starts where because there's a lack of strategy in the onset, but it
You
can be course corrected.
you mean camp isn't a special snowflake industry?
You'd be
What?
surprised.
Uh, okay. Um, that's heartbreaking to a lot of folks right now, I think. Um, okay, but so we covered that. The next thing, this is where I'm going to start to hand off to Sophia a bit, but the thing that I see over and over again with these, in addition to the players, is that there is another round of pitfalls and things to avoid, which is a lack of brand cohesion, would be probably the technical term. Um, and so oftentimes that looks like not having a brand guide. I know, I know because I grew up at a day camp that my mom ran where we didn't have a brand guide and there was just everybody crowded around the computer to pick the font that they thought was good, and whoever cared the most was the person that won, or the person that write the checks, was the person that won. And so creating a brand guide so that you don't have to have discussions around fonts. Uh, Personal anecdote, the guy that created Comic Sans, this is not a personal anecdote, it's just a fun tidbit. Uh, he really wishes he hadn't done it because Comic Sans was made for comic books, not, you know, essays and masters and PhD theses and things like that. Um, and people use fonts for all sorts of weird and crazy, inappropriate uses. This is a fake example I made just to kind of scare people. Um, and same thing for logo usage. This is real. I definitely saw people stretching logos like this in my experience. Um, and so these brand guidance frames really are meant to be direction. So there's um, a maxim that I've kind of developed in my life as a camp person, but it works everywhere, is direction prevents correction. And so if you don't give people the direction of a brand guide, um, and specific guidance for how to speak and share things on social, you are going to get surprised in the form of things you don't want to see. Anything to you're vouching and verifying?
I'm vouching and verifying, and I think that it's a really good point to make, and kind of definitely segues into what I'm about to talk about in regards to how that reflects on your social media accounts.
Cool. Um, so this is the literal seam of where our work overlaps because people will tell me after an hour of working on email and SMS campaigns and ads for people on social, like, what are we doing about TikTok? Or I think we need to, it used to be, I think we need to get on the Snapchats. Um, so do you want to kind of give a little bit of an overview for folks on like why it's important to choose platforms and just kind of like what goes into that?
Yeah, there's so much that goes into it. And I think that when your camp isn't armed with a strategist or somebody who's really well knowledgeable about the platforms and what they each mean, there's a lot of what I like to call um, just throw it up there. And that means just putting one piece of content across all platforms. And unfortunately, for most of the platforms, and that little, unfortunately, I'm so sad that that little tweet is no longer and it's supposed to be an X, but for many platforms, that's just not the case. And for most, it's not the case. So for camps and really any other company that's looking to grow their social media presence, a strategy in place that includes what platforms you need to be on is highly important. And then what to produce on those platforms is also a part of the puzzle. Because you can't just, like I said, throw everything up there and hope that it's successful. You kind of have to have a plan for each one of them so that when you have content coming in from a camp photographer, a camp videographer, a camp social person who's working on the day to day, you have a place to send that content in a format that works for the platform that you're on. So what we do, or what I like to do when I talk to a client, is really diagnose what kind of content they have, and then talk about the platforms that would best support that type of content. And Eric and I have definitely been talking about what this might look like for camps and how exciting it is to kind of have this perspective of a social expert, but also a camp expert to know where these things should go. But that it plays such a big role in what you're doing. And if you're starting without that, it kind of just becomes a lot of mishigas, if you will, pardon my Yiddish. Um, and it doesn't necessarily make sense. So sometimes you'll see something on Facebook and you're like, why is that on Facebook? It happens to me all the time. I'm like, the audience isn't there. And so really leaning into a strategy for your platforms is highly important when starting a social strategy.
Um, this is definitely, I feel like an old man, but I'm like, "Well, I remember when Facebook was just in, but it's true that the platforms have kind of popped up and changed and emerged. So there is this unique uh reasons for why to pick. So the other sort of pitfalls here in relation to that Uh, don't you
More
just don't you just love more mice?
mice.
But some mice play with blocks in their elementary school for mice and build a house, and some are just picking up blocks and putting them down.
Yeah, and I think the house is necessary to be able to post with confidence. If you're just the mouse that's, placing everything on the ground but not trying to build within a house, it's all kind of gonna crumble pretty quickly. Um, a lot of times, uh, it takes a moment to stop posting, take a step back and say, like, well, what are we really trying to do here? Who are we trying to reach? Having a roadmap is so important and a laid out strategy. And it could be camp dependent. And I think that's probably what we're going to find out really quickly is that some camps have certain problems, and different platforms are going to be there to solve those problems. When you think about where campers are, they're most likely on TikTok and consuming TikTok. And if you're trying to reach campers, that potentially is the place to meet them, right? Leading back to my last slide. But all of that comes with strategy and a history of knowing where to be. And if you don't have that, you're kind of like if a tree falls in a forest kind of thing. Is anyone really hearing it? I think especially when we look at Instagram accounts of particular camps or just generally, honestly, like small businesses, there's a lot, that's lacking even in the top half information of what they're doing. And you're already starting kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you don't have a strategy and then a content marketing, uh, content calendar driving what you're doing and also making everything look super professional. So all of those things are pieces of the puzzle that make this house that you can stand on and be pretty confident that at least what you're doing is putting out your content in a strategic way. And if you're not, you're sort of starting behind the pack, I would say.
This is one of the things that we looked at. Frequently I will find that a client that wants us to run ads to their Instagram page or use something or to Insta in their Insta account, and I go to their bio, and there is no link to request more information in their link tree options, and sometimes there's not even a link, and there's a bunch of manifestations of this sort of like random acts of social posting, but they all kind of fit into this broad category, I think. Cool.
Yeah, and this leads into the idea that social can be sporadic. And this is where people get mad at me. I tend to say like this would be the slide or the time in the presentation where you're gonna say, I don't know if I like that. And I'm
Yeah.
gonna tell you it's okay. You don't have to like it at first. But what each platform, and most importantly, the big platforms, let's say like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, what they really want from you is consistent posting. And sometimes that means once a day if you can, sometimes that means more than once a day. And that consistent posting turns into followers, turns into more engagements, turns into likes because you're telling the algorithm, I'm here to play. And that's what they want. When I worked at CNBC, I had to learn really quickly that the YouTube algorithm favored long videos. Why is that? Because they wanted you to stay on the platform longer. You have to sort of pay to play in these fields. And that's why I say like people don't like when I talk about this because it's an uncomfortable part of social media that you have to sort of lean into what the platforms are expecting of you, or else they're not going to return the favor of giving you um, engagements, views, etc. So if you're posting sporadically, like once a week, the algorithm's really never going to pick you up. Even on Instagram, which has a lesser algorithm, I would say, on Reels, they have an algorithm, but it's not as good as TikTok or YouTube. They still won't favor somebody only putting in that effort once a week. I wish it were a different case because I don't think that every company has the resources to build to that, to say like, okay, we're comfortable posting every day, even in the off season of whatever we're doing. And especially for camp, because I know it's really hard to gather that content and then continue posting. But it is just the truth of social media, and it has to be said in order to create a good strategy for anybody who's looking to grow. Are you mad at me, Eric?
No, 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 I'm not. I'm not. And
I was joking. It was that's
this
part of
is
my shtick.
well, I think I might have frozen at that second. I might have looked mad. Uh, this is actually people often ask me, should we be in a place? Should we be on X platform? And the answer that I'm often give them is the short answer is no, but the reason why is because you're not going to dedicate to doing it meaningfully, so don't do it.
Yeah, it's the dedication. And and I think that's another reason that it's detrimental to small businesses or people that don't have a social team or can't afford to have an actual, big agency representing them, is that that time and effort is so it feels very hard. It feels hard when you're looking at it. And I'll give an example of like having a newborn because that happened to me recently. All of it seems very upfront, like really hard. Like, well, feeding them 9 times, that's crazy. There's so much that goes into it. But once you get into the rhythm of doing it, it becomes natural. It truly is like riding a bike. The repetition becomes just part of what you do. But it starts, I think, for this group, it probably starts in the summer gathering content. It might be the one thing that gets you to the place where you're able to post at least once a day on these platforms. Is really capturing the content you want throughout the year, but especially in the summer.
It's almost like we have to go to camp to learn
I would
about
love to.
it. So on that note, this is something that has not come up, from one of the Q&As in these last conversations we've had, but is there an on-ramp? Like, can you cut up the pill for me having to say to somebody, post something online daily? Is there a sort of like smooth entry to couple days a week and there a rhythm there that you kind of advise when, as opposed to jumping onto like the marathon training on day one?
I think it's going to depend on staffing and it's going to depend on external resources, potentially working with somebody like us, how we can create content calendars to make it easy so that the on ramp, even if it's a big on ramp, like there's a lot going on in the ramp, that we can still make it doable.
Mm.
But there might be other camps that need to take, it's a real, going to be a real new thing for them. And it might take them the practice. But I'm telling you, those practice rounds are truly practice because unless something randomly goes viral, which sometimes it does, it usually needs like the pickup of the once a day to be able to catch in the algorithm to get that success. I'm not saying it's impossible or it never happens because it does. Somebody sometimes one time just posts a funny video of their dad at Christmas, like missing a step and falling down the stairs, and they get 1.2 million likes on that video on TikTok. That's not what we're doing here, but those things happen. And I'm sure they happens to camps as well, where something really meaningful happens or something really cool happens at camp and someone films it and they don't have a lot of followers and it gets pickup, but they're not doing the algorithm game. It's just random. So I'm not saying it never happens, but yes, the on-ramp can be different for each, depending on where your camp's at or where your company's at, how that ramp is designed. But we can definitely ease people into it who aren't really there yet for the one time a day vibe.
Cool, cool. Um, Look at this Giga Chad mouse. What a
This,
beast.
this one still scares me, I think.
It's a,
I don't love his arm so much.
it's a little creepy.
It's a little creepy, but I wish I was that buff. I'm not. But I think that the point of this slide is to say that you could take a lot of what I'm saying here and do it yourself. And I think that Eric and I, knew that going in, you can take a lot of this knowledge of posting once a day, algorithmic things that make the algorithms tick, like what's special on YouTube. is like going for more time because they want you to stay on the platform longer. Those are little tips and tricks that probably a lot of people know who are in the social world. What I think the difference is that those little tips and tricks are only the beginning of what a social strategist and a social expert can provide for your camp company. It's really about the years, seeing all the platforms go through all the changes, knowing that Snapchat's not even relevant anymore. All of those things that perhaps, a young camper who's doing her social media might not know, or somebody who is older and might not have the understanding of the platforms. Um, this is a perfect fit, I think, in terms of passion, understanding of the companies, meaning of the camps, because being a camper, having that experience. I was never a director, I wish I was kind of. But having the experience of a camper and a counselor with the years of experience really adds the pieces to the puzzle to make it really shiny. Um, so I think that's what we're saying here is really that it's hard to DIY, it's easier with a partner, and especially one that knows camp.
Yeah, and somebody undoubtedly someone's going to ask a question about attribution, and there are a lot of insights. They're like insider insights and tools that you can use to track if you're really going to do it and try and commit to a platform to make sure that you're getting the right clicks and the right demographics and changing your posting times and it's not just spray and pray.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um, Ashley asked a question, if you can see that.
yeah,
Is there any data that shows that parents make decisions based on social media? The commitment to posting daily is huge right now, doing 3 times a week, and I'm wondering whether the ROI is worth it.
I love that challenge, Ashley. Is it for real?
You know, I think you could speak more into the parents making decisions based on social media aspect. I have a feeling what you're gonna say. Um, so I'll let you go first and then I can follow
Yeah.
up with, is it real?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, that is very real. Actually, it's a good question because you have to consider, is how much is your time worth? I would, my my gut is it depends on probably no less than 10 different factors, but the biggest one is that uh, if you're listening to this and you're skeptical about social media, you are probably saying camp is a referral business. It just matters what the friends say. And you would be right. The thing is that one of the ways that you now get assessed through a referral is who you present in a one-way outbound window into your camp's business world, which is one of those ways is your social media accounts. So, as part of, we'll cover this in the workshop that we're going to offer, for later with Sophia, but your bio is your brochure. It's kind of like the front door. And so oftentimes I would rephrase your question, Ashley, in that it's more likely that you can verifiably see people leave and not like or trust or request information than they're like magnetically drawn in and are going to enroll in a vacuum. I think the undoubtedly people will click. So I see this a lot in the ad space. There are two real links that you can click when you're running an Instagram Reels ad, Meta, Facebook leads form ad, or reading, and we're on YouTube too. You can go and take the action that's suggested to learn more, or go to the dates and rates, or you can click and poke around and stay on the platform because that's what the platforms all want. You can go and investigate who is this person. And so the number one sort of lowest hanging fruit is check all the boxes around that sort of who is this person to make sure it's who you want to be. So do you look like you have the important strategic things available to you? Is it on brand? Are you talking the right language? Have you updated your dates and rates to be for 2026 during the summer, after the summer, right now? Um, and so I think that's probably the more apt way to think about losing or winning a parent as they're about to sign up. I don't think many overnight camps for sure, some day camps, most day camps. I don't think someone's randomly clicking on an ad or a viral video and then click also like, wow, I'm registering right then and there on the spot. It happens, but that's not the ROI I think we're chasing. We think we're chasing that sort of supportive ROI, meaning it's helping your camper's neighbor that sees them get on the bus every day and is happy. It's helping them realize why they're so happy.
And I think there could be so many different goals to set for camps. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, um, just one thing that you're trying to get out of social media. Like one of the things could be registrations, the other thing could be camper happiness and reminding them why camp is so awesome year round through your social media accounts. So there's a lot that can go into it. Is it real? Is 3 days a week work 3 days a week worth it? Well, first of all, I'm not sure what platforms you're posting on, but if you're at least doing 3 days a week, then you're keeping the lights on. That's what I would call it. I would say like that is keeping the lights on, and it's definitely important to keep the lights on. Because what Eric was talking about, what people do is they'll go to your socials and they want to see that you're active and also that you look professional, so that you're not implementing 2016 social media strategies, but that you're implementing 2025 strategies. And it's not as that the person coming in to look, who's maybe a mom, is saying, "Hey, I'm a social media expert. This looks weird." Your eye is now trained, pretty much everyone's eye is now trained to go to a social account and be like, oh, this doesn't look good, or this is what I would expect to see from a camp that's really putting effort into their appearance and how they want to be seen. And that it comes, we talked about branding a lot, definitely that. We talked about the bio on Instagram being highly important. There are all these things that you can do to make sure that you're keeping the lights on, it looks good, and that when people go to your social media as like their way to look at your website in a way, because a lot of people go to social media before they'll go to a website, that it's buttoned up, that it's updated, and that you're at least posting 3 days a week. That's probably the minimum, and maybe the on ramp for some people. But I think I would encourage you to stick with us for a little bit and figure out how you can increase those numbers by potentially not doing too um, much more than what you're doing, but by pulling the right pieces together to make it easier to post more often. And I think that's what we're going to provide in the workshop, is showcasing how we can get there for a lot of camps.
Yeah, I'm gonna dangle one more sort of nugget for workshop style on this is that uh, if you are not organized in a annual and platform and campaign level scale, like we're going to show you how to do it later, you can't share the stage. And so that sort of burden of like, oh, I got to make dinner, but I also got to do this because I definitely have felt that. I know exactly what that feels like. Uh, if you kind of become unhelpable if it's not transferable. And so we'll talk about sort of like ambassador level type things and sharing the stage in the workshop. But that's certainly one way to have more effectiveness. But very similarly to like the campfire, a camp with a director that's the Pied Piper at the campfire is amazing. A camp that has 35 people that are campers and new staff and old staff that can all lead, a song around the campfire is a lot better.
Definitely.
Okay, so we're gonna switch. We're gonna move on a little bit further and talk about what are the components that anybody can build out. And we've kind of addressed some of this, but first, this sort of hierarchy of these components that we pointed out.
Yeah, I think that I talked early on about remapping or course correcting, if you will, uh, for camps that feel like they have social, but they didn't have a strategy behind it before, and now they're looking to venture into that. And this is a really good way to look at how we get to the content, because that's the most important thing that we've been talking about is the content.
Yeah.
And because at the end of the day is what you're going to do to drive. whether it's paid, whether it's organic, that's your driver. But it starts with brand ID. The branding needs to be there. We need to understand what that is, what the goals are. Then the strategy, the social strategy can be put into place. The strategy informs the platforms which you're going to be on. And then the platforms then shoot into campaigns, what we do quarterly, what we do off season, on season, and then how that looks for our content. And typically, what I do and what we would be doing is content calendaring. So, figuring out what your content's going to be year round, and then diving into the weekly aspect of it, of how that builds over time and how you capture that content at the end of the day.
Yeah, I want to revisit really quickly Ashley's question because I think this is where that question sort of uh, it gets solved on the in the setup once again, is that if you have a specific ROI, ROI on a platform is kind of impossible to really capture completely. But an ROI on a campaign to re-enroll in a certain set of windows, let's just say the third quarter after camp, where you have a specific audience of returning campers that you want to come back and a set of campaign and content that's going to relate to that, you can compare very easily how many people re-enrolled in that window during this year versus the prior year where you did other things exactly the same. Now, granted, there is experiential bias and difference between the years, but when you have specific tighter campaigns, it becomes much more easily quantified.
And I think the one thing to note here is growth. You implementing this strategy for your camp, the growth could be phenomenal. And the growth just doesn't happen on every single post. I want to say that right off the bat, especially with organic. Paid is a different story. We can talk about paid and how successful paid can be when it's done right and optimized in the right ways for camp. But an always on content strategy, sometimes you're going to get 200 views on something and you'll be like, what? That Sophia told me that we could get more. It's not everything is not always going to hit, even if you hit a trend and the right sound for a social post. It's still the puzzle pieces might be there and it just might not work. But the consistency is where you see the growth. So the continuing, even when it seems like, oh, this week we had a really bad week, not a lot of views, you continue on the next week and you keep doing it because the growth comes with the consistency. So all of this to say is that like once we build through this structure, the content consistency, I should probably put under content, is probably the
Oh,
biggest thing. Yep.
I like that. Okay, that's
Oh.
that's that's cool.
We're trying
Uh,
to spell consistency with
yeah,
your
that was you
bookmark.
saw it. It was perfect. I didn't. There's no spell check on handwriting.
Exactly.
Um,
This is
okay.
a deeper dive into the components of a social strategy. And I think a little nod into what we would get into in the workshops, and any type of work that we would do with you. And it ladders back into what we were just talking about. You need the brand identity, know who you are, what you stand for in order to inform the audience, understand who you're talking about, what they care about. Are you talking to only parents? Are we talking to parents and campers? Are we talking to B2B leaders? And then talking about how you're intentional about where you show up and why, those platforms, the content that tells the story, making sure that the voice and the visuals are consistent. And that's another thing that me and Eric are going to talk about is providing that guidance and assistance to the voice and visuals is highly important. Making sure that whoever's running the social media knows the voice and is consistent with that. And then, of course, we have our goals and KPIs, which we always have, defining them, making sure we know what success looks like. And then, of course, community, which we haven't even spoken about, but another big topic is how you engage, respond, and build real relationships online. Because posting something and getting 1,000 comments and then nobody responds to any questions is not a great approach. So all of these things, all these puzzle pieces or bike pieces, as you'll see here, are really important parts of coming up with that social strategy.
It just occurred to me that looking at this, that some people might be like, well, I have that. I have a two-page Canva document that has all of that, Sophia. Isn't that enough? And so I just commented in the chat, okay, let's go off script if somebody dares. If you drop a link, because well, first of all, if you can't access it in less than 30 seconds, nobody else can, and so it's not being very useful. But if you have something and you're curious, drop it in the Q&A, and maybe we'll pull it up and we'll do a little live diagnostic right then and there
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that.
at the end.
Okay.
Uh, okay, so moving on to like when all this stuff comes together, what does it look like when in a social strategy document?
Yes. And this example, obviously, we've taken out the name because we don't want to get sued. Mostly just to save this is a private document, but to show you how a very big sports drink company how we took their goals for the summer and strategized a deck to make that happen. And these are a few slides that showcase how that can be done for anyone. So this is a sports drink, so obviously it's not camp related, but I think it's helpful to see. So the execution, having kind of like a brand identity for that execution or for what your summer is going to be is really important. So showing your consumers what you're all about. That's what this campaign was about. It was about showing your best summer flow with your best sports drink in tow. I could do some terrible rhyming. But we really wanted to make sure that the execution matched the goals, which was summer fun and hydration. And we came up with an idea and executed on that idea. And this is a sample page of how we can do that for a company.
Yeah, this is one of the many places where my camp world experience with social lined up with your corporate world, but to a scale that dwarfs, you know, you'd be surprised how many camps have tried to execute a influencer, like a micro nano influencer campaign sometimes, and some have been very effective, and some have been an epic waste of time.
Hmm.
The big difference is in an organized plan that makes very similar to selling, camp to a parent and having your, socials look organized and professional. If they're going to join the team, you represent them.
Yep.
And so, and specifically, I'll speak for the Berkshire Soccer Academy. We did this with female soccer players or girls who were soccer players. Their parents were borderline psychotic about managing their social accounts and had full tons. They were flooded with ambassador requests from things that don't make sense. So they were actually delighted to hear about, a program that made sense for their kid. Anyways, moving on. Oh,
Yep, and this is just so speaking of influencers, the way that we approached this was picking influencers that felt on brand for what they wanted to do in the execution, and that laddered back into the goals. So this person obviously is not this is not one-to-one with camp. 1 million followers is a lot of followers, and it's an influencer campaign, which doesn't necessarily feel totally right for camp. But it is the way that we saw this really taking off was leveraging her social media to influence the company's social media and for her to be the brand ambassador for the campaign that we ran during that summer. And it was a really like picking influencers is another thing that we could talk about if it is of interest, but it takes a lot of understanding audiences and making sure that whatever is front facing for your company through the influencer feels on brand. And I think that ladders back into that flow chart that we looked at a few slides ago.
yeah, the influencer matchmaking is like it is a thing.
Absolutely.
Um, so moving on, ah, back to spreadsheet land.
Yes, your favorite.
back to my native land.
Yes.
Uh, so do you want to just kind of connect the social strategy doc and the annualized calendar piece, and then I'll kind of fill in at the end, I guess.
Yeah. I think that, as Eric and I have been talking, it's pretty clear that this content calendar full of ideas to do every day isn't going to happen overnight. This is going to be a build for sure. But what we can provide on certain levels of how we're working with camps is this type of content calendaring. Working with a staff member over the summer to not only capture the content, which will be important in the content calendar, but then also where that fits, whether it's an immediate post, because it's something that's happening at camp now, it's something we're saving for later in the year. All of those things would be included in that content calendar, even perhaps two tabs, if you will, one for content capturing and one for content posting. Because I love spreadsheets and they're more the merrier. But that's another level and layer of what we can provide and help guide is the content calendar, because that is kind of your Bible, holy grail, if you will, of moving forward with a social strategy, because it's all of the executions, the most important thing.
Yeah, so I often sort of defend my love of spreadsheets. That I was not born as like a anal retentive super spreadsheety sort of brain. This is a learned behavior. Uh, but I had developed this maxim that if you are not a 5 quarter camp, meaning you can't look and plan 5 quarters ahead, you are by default a 3 quarter camp, which means you pick your head up out after recovering from camp, which in your well-deserved rest. Uh, and maybe it's September, maybe it's October, maybe it's November, and you kind of pick your head up and you go, okay, great, where next summer is on the horizon, and you play to that game. And so it was a huge breakthrough for us at Berkshire Soccer Academy when we could look and pencil in. For me, it was more like six months of calendaring content because that allows you to think, what do I have to capture this summer for use throughout the year to lead up to next summer? Uh, and I have a kind of like a cheat example where we had Mia Hamm come to camp, and so we took video content of Mia Hamm, Christina Lee, and her partner Trish Venturini Hawk. The three of them, they're like soccer players. They run one week at the Berkshire Soccer Academy. So we took video of them answering specific questions about the following year before they left. And so we had to pull together questions and we had to answer our own questions about dates that they're coming back. And so if you don't have that content, if you don't know that you're going to do Camp T-shirt Day post, which I think is today or it's coming up, I should know that, but if you don't know what you're going to do for these things, you can't capture that content during your key content times. Um,
That's a really good point, Eric, because that points out adding into the content calendar and the content capturing calendar things that you want to post throughout the year. So those timely things, I hate to lean into all of them because not all of them are relevant. So some people are like, we'll celebrate every single one, National Coffee Day, Donut Day, da, da, da. It's not all, we don't need to celebrate them all, but the important ones, the ones that we know tie into camp or tie into something just silly and special about camp. I actually think coffee might work for a lot of camps because I love the camp coffee. I'm a weird person and camp coffee really delights me. But there are moments to lean into and moments to lean out to, and that's important to get into the content calendar before you start capturing over the summer so that you know, okay, well, if it's t-shirt day in whenever that is, that we actually have a post from the summer that ties into that and we'll add it to the content calendar for X day outside of camp, outside of sessions.
yeah. I mean, we haven't really addressed the different camp audiences fully, but it's like staff and camp coffee or whatever top secret thing that the staff are super into, whether it's stealing Sharpies,
Mm.
leaving beautiful post-it note poetry on people's desks and backpacks and beds, and like whatever it is, that's the thing to uh, to work on and to capture content on. And so our kind of like internal language, we would call those things fixtures.
Yeah.
And so again, I'm going to keep using Berkshire Soccer just because it's the only example that I can share freely, but International Women's and Girls Day of Sport,
Yep.
March 6th. It's like that's a great day to link a sporty girls camp with, you know, a women's professional league or the International Women's Sports Foundation and Billie Jean King. Like you can start making these connections with really powerful people on social and you increase your connectiveness. But you can't do that if you don't know about them and you're reacting 2 hours before you leave for the day and you're like, oh gosh.
Yeah, you got to know the days beforehand. But I also think have fun with them. Like I called out coffee just then. You don't have to do coffee. But then I thought about it and I thought about Camp Coffee. And there is something about Camp Coffee that's probably universal that you can do an amazing post about for that day. And someone probably is like, oh, we would never celebrate National Coffee Day. These days are stupid. Yes, sometimes they are, but sometimes it's just a place to have fun and like talk about Camp Coffee. Maybe no one's talking about it. Maybe, we're tapping into something. Maybe it's like a staff member who's, is missing camp and they're wondering, am I going to return? I don't know. And then post about Camp Coffee. And you're like, yeah, got to get back for the coffee. Almost as like a joke, but serious. Like those things really do make impact for staff members, campers, even parents to call out things that feel camp. And camp is so much fun, and every camp has different elements that they do. I was talking to Eric about the Olympics, and he was like, the real Olympics, and I was like, oh no, when I reference the Olympics, it's the Frost Valley Olympics, and you don't know about that. And so just little things that are almost inside jokes with your camp. Every camp has the inside jokes or the inside things that people don't know about. Those are things that you can find moments to talk about throughout the year and that are so, so, so important for retention. Um, and really having fun with your social. Those are the places where you get to have the most fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's so much that can be done there, which is part of the reason why we put this to the whole kind of webinar together today. And it's also why we have bundled, some services together to provide a package for you all, if you feel so inclined. We're calling this a social success workshop. And so the workshop for us is going to include um, similar to this call, a live training. So it'll be, oh, I just covered it up. That's no good. A live sort of webinar style training where you'll get inside the, sort of teacher's guidebook, and Sophia and I will walk through the exact steps that we're going to go through. And then you'll have a 1 hour Zoom with Sophia and your team to really deploy them. You'll walk through some of what you've done during the advanced webinar. Sophia will take that away, provide you additional feedback, and then you'll have an additional private 1 hour Zoom individually with you and your camp, and whether it's you and your director, your admin, your registrars are, your digital native, whatever, whoever makes sense on the team. Uh, I have to fix this. Somebody's gonna call me and say, "Did you know that you deleted that feedback?" Um, so that this is the workshop that we have envisioned. This is a unique thing. This is the first, sort of season where we're trying to do this and fix it ahead of time to give people a jump start. In addition to this, we are also offering a social retainer where you can meet on a monthly, weekly, bi-weekly basis, quarterly, with Sophia as our sort of fractional CMO with this social bend. Um, or you can keep doing things yourself, and that's fine. Um, and so I'm going to drop the link in the chat here. Uh,
And we do have two questions that came in.
okay, actually, I'll pause that. You can pull up the questions.
Yeah, so one question, what about generative AI Corey's asking, what about generative AI to fill in gaps in preparation for campaigns? I have no problem with people using generative AI in the right ways to solve for a gap in staffing, as long as we're coaching you in the ways to use it in the right way, to sound natural, to I hate saying like, yeah, just use AI. A lot of it's going to be using AI, but with your own filter. So making it easier for yourself, but knowing that AI doesn't know your brand as well as you do, and making sure that however you're filling in those gaps, that you're working with your AI tool to constantly correct it or help build a relationship where the AI really understands your camp. Because the worst thing that you want to do is go out with content that feels too AI. So what I'd like to say is like build with AI to help scale, but make sure that you have checkpoints on it and that you're not just, floating in the ether of AI without checks. Checks and balances, super important. Um, we
Yeah.
have, sorry, go
I
ahead.
also was a quick note on that. I never thought that I would be spending time customizing AI stuff with clients, but this is a thing that's it's very popular now, where people are asking for a great, they know that it's possible and they know that they could do something with generative AI, but they don't know how to make it work so it fits and doesn't look like everyone else's, sea of sameness. I think that's uh the bumper sticker caveat is like, great, you can use generative AI as long as it doesn't turn into a sea of sameness of, great, a Pixar style picture of this perfect, age and ethnically diverse set of four kids around a campfire. It's like, we don't need any more of those. We got all of them.
Mhm.
We got it.
Or you could just build mice all day and just figure out how the mice look best on your page. That was a joke. If you're joining late, we like mice, AI generated mice. Two questions, actually, two people asked the same question. Can you help with posting on social media? I think that's definitely something that we can talk to you in terms of the scale of how you want to work with us. That could definitely enter into the chat in terms of needs. We want to hear what your needs are. We've sort of set out on a journey to figure out what those are, but would love to hear feedback on what people actually need the most help with, and then lean into that as well. And then yes, a recording
And
session will be sent out after this as
well,
another.
Stacy Simpson is going to have to purchase the recording because I know her and she definitely had like triple booked. She was triple booked. Very important meetings at our new camp. Um, but the comment on the can we post for you? Uh, I just want to, it's helpful to kind of take the highest level perspective again, is Sophia and I in our strategist sort of seats have solved for some of the problems that happen when you just start with the campaign and content level stuff. Yeah, you could find somebody on Fiverr or a VA to post something for you daily. But if you start there, if you don't start with a really solid social strategy that includes your brand and includes, which platforms are you going to invest in and who's going to do it, then you're kind of starting with the wrong order and you're back to being one of those mice that's playing with bricks and not building a house.
Yeah, and I think it's another good place to bring in here, Eric, the idea of the summer camp staff member who can really focus on doing all of this kind of stuff, which includes scheduling posts potentially for not only the summer, for the rest of the year. I talked a lot with Eric in the beginning about, do camps have this person? Is this person combined with other jobs? Are they also a counselor while being a social media person? And I think that's another place where we want to step in and help potentially train your employees. Hopefully, having one staff member dedicated to this is their job, and they maybe have an interest in social media and they want to work with the camp on that and work with us. We can train them, get them up to speed, and then also help with that production of scheduling posts, which is an important part of content strategy and development because you have to have someone to post these things. So I totally understand the question, and I think there's multiple ways that we can help address that.
Yeah, I also want to add that in the same vein that the social strategy document and calendaring becoming the core to work off of for organic, I also think that this is the mandatory first step if you want anyone to help you and run ads for you, whether it be, Google programmatic or social, you definitely want to integrate back to that sort of ROI. If you're going to invest in a platform, it might make sense to bring people there and not just rely on the algo, although the algo is going to be more technically more affordable if you spend the time to get there.
Yeah, and I think the algo and paid is they run in circles together. And sometimes when the organic isn't hitting, we know that the paid is in the background. And if a camp can dedicate resources to both of those things, which we know is hard, but we think it's important, that you're always going to be sort of like ahead of the pack on that one. This is really setting this whole thing and everything we've talked about will set you well ahead of a lot of companies and camps, because we know what camps are doing and what they're not doing, and we're trying to make everyone more efficient and more in line to grow on their social.
And you'll be able to get help. That's the sort of like,
Yeah,
you
like
make
your health.
yourself helpable. Make yourself help, whether it be through Sophia, myself, a teammate, or a virtual assistant around the planet. You become helpable if you get organized at this level. So that's really fundamentally what we're offering here. So uh, thanks so much for those of you that have stuck around. Um, I didn't. I think I put the link in there. Everybody can see the link to the chat. I'll email that out, and who knows? Maybe we'll go off script again and offer a little like 24-hour shot clock promo code. That would be fun. Like, that'd be fun. We'll
Yeah,
see. We'll see.
absolutely.
We'll see. So thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks to Sophia for stepping up and sharing the stage. It was awesome to have you.
Thank
Uh,
you.
And we'll see you soon, gang. Also, just keep your eyes peeled for an email with the link to register, maybe a promo code, and we'll get you the replay in a day or two.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, gang.